For decades, the Ozarks meant something simple. Cabins passed down through generations. Fishing at dawn on water your grandfather knew. Church on Sunday in buildings where your family's name appears in records going back a century. Land that stayed in families because selling it would mean selling identity itself. The Ozarks were Missouri's constant, the place that did not change while everything else did. The anchor that kept the state connected to something older, slower, more permanent than the frantic transformation happening everywhere else. But if you have not looked closely in the last 5 years, you are missing something significant. The Ozarks did not just grow, they changed. Quietly at first, then rapidly, then strategically, as outside money discovered what locals always knew and began converting that knowledge into investment. Most Missourians still think it is the same region it was in 2005. They picture the Ozarks they remember from childhood vacations, from family reunions, from stories their parents told. They assume continuity because the trees still stand and the water still sparkles. It is not the same. Not anymore. Tonight we are breaking down what the Ozarks have actually become, and why Missouri has not caught up to the transformation happening in its own backyard. The Lake of the Ozarks is no longer local in the way it used to be. Lake property used to rotate between Missouri families. Grandparents bought modest cabins, passed them to children, who passed them to grandchildren. The shoreline belonged to people who lived within driving distance and used it seasonally while maintaining primary residences elsewhere in the state. That pattern has broken. Out-of-state buyers now dominate prime shoreline acquisitions. Families from Texas, Illinois, Kansas, and beyond discovered that Lake of the Ozarks offered waterfront property at prices that seemed impossibly low compared to coastal alternatives. They bought aggressively. Short-term rentals converted family cabins into income-generating assets. Properties that once hosted the same families every summer now host different tourists every weekend. The economic logic changed from a place to use to an asset to monetize. Second homes owned by people who don't vote in Missouri, don't participate in local governance, and don't integrate into community life now line significant portions of the shoreline. The lake still looks Missouri. The geography hasn't changed, but economically it's becoming something else. A resort region owned by people who experience it as visitors rather than residents. Quiet wealth is moving into the Ozarks in ways that don't generate headlines. The Ozarks aren't attracting Silicon Valley billionaires seeking publicity. No tech moguls are announcing Ozark compounds on social media. The wealth arriving here doesn't want attention. Remote professionals earning coastal salaries discovered they could live lakeside for a fraction of what a similar lifestyle would cost elsewhere. They bought property, set up home offices, and integrated into communities without announcing themselves. Retirees from higher-cost states, including Illinois, California, and Colorado, found that their retirement savings stretched dramatically further in the Ozarks. They sold expensive homes elsewhere and bought Ozark property with cash left over. Investors buying timber and lakefront parcels accumulated holdings that will appreciate over decades. They are not flipping. They are holding, waiting for the long-term value that patient capital captures. This wealth does not make noise. It does not seek recognition. It just buys land, homes, businesses, and influence. The transformation happens through transactions that do not generate coverage, but do generate ownership changes. Short-term rentals changed the housing equation in ways that locals feel but outsiders do not see. Cabins that used to house families now house tourists. Properties that provided affordable housing for workers have been converted to vacation rentals that generate more revenue than long-term leases could. Local workers compete with vacation cash flow for housing access. The same property that might rent to a local family for $1,200 a month generates $300 a night as a short-term rental. The economic logic forces conversion, even when owners might prefer local tenants. Entire pockets of lake towns are no longer residential, they are inventory. Neighborhoods that once housed permanent residents now house rotating tourists. The people who work at restaurants, clean rentals, and maintain properties cannot afford to live near where they work. That changes community stability in ways that accumulate over time. Schools lose enrollment, churches lose members. The institutions that make communities function lose the population base they require. Springfield is not just a college town anymore, and understanding that shift explains regional dynamics. Springfield quietly became a healthcare anchor for the entire Ozarks region. Hospital systems based there serve populations across southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. Medical employment provides stable, well-paying jobs that do not fluctuate with tourism seasons. Springfield became a logistics corridor as distribution facilities discovered its central location and affordable operating costs. Warehousing, transportation, and supply chain operations concentrated there, without generating the attention that similar growth generates elsewhere. Springfield became a population stabilizer for the broader Ozarks. While rural areas aged and declined, Springfield maintained demographic balance through employment that attracted and retained working-age adults. It does not trend on Twitter. National media does not cover Springfield's trajectory. But Springfield runs the region now, providing the economic foundation that surrounding communities depend on. The Ozarks are younger than people think, at least in specific corridors. While much of rural Missouri ages as young people leave for opportunities elsewhere, parts of the Ozarks have younger inflows. Springfield attracts workers in their 20s and 30s. Branson corridors draw lifestyle migrants seeking affordability. Remote work has enabled people who might have settled in urban areas to choose Ozark locations instead. That demographic shift changes everything downstream. Voting patterns reflect younger priorities. Spending patterns favor different businesses. Development patterns respond to different demands. The Ozarks are not uniformly old, uniformly declining, or uniformly losing the next generation. The patterns are more complicated, with growth in some places, decline in others, and transformation everywhere. Corporate land ownership is expanding across the Ozarks in ways most residents do not track. Timber companies accumulate holdings that span thousands of acres. Investment groups purchase parcels that look like individual transactions but represent coordinated acquisition strategies. Private equity-backed land purchases consolidate ownership in fewer hands. Large tracts are being assembled not with loud announcements or publicity, but steadily, through patient acquisition that accumulates into control. The families who owned Ozark land for generations face economic pressures that make selling rational. The corporations and investment groups buying that land face no such pressures. The transfer moves in one direction. Branson is repositioning beyond the tourism identity that defined it for decades. The shows and attractions still operate. Tourism still drives significant economic activity, but Branson is adding layers that extend beyond seasonal visitors. Retirement-friendly development attracts permanent residents seeking affordable communities with a mild climate and low costs. Remote work capability attracts professionals who discovered during the pandemic that they could live anywhere with reliable internet. Low-cost lifestyle positioning attracts people priced out of where they lived before. Branson offers housing, services, and quality of life at costs that seem impossibly low to people arriving from expensive markets. Tourism was phase one. It was the economic foundation that built infrastructure and recognition. Relocation is phase two. It is the transformation of Branson from destination to residence. The infrastructure is straining under growth it wasn't designed to handle. Roads built for seasonal traffic, the summer surge of vacation visitors, now carry year-round volumes from full-time residents. The traffic patterns changed, but the road capacity did not. Water systems and utilities are stretched in some lake communities where seasonal demand became permanent. Systems designed to handle peak summer loads now handle those loads year-round. Growth came faster than planning. Investment in the infrastructure that growth requires lagged behind the growth itself. The gap creates problems that compound, traffic that discourages further development, and utilities that limit what new construction can occur. Remote work opened a door that will never close again. The Ozarks suddenly became viable for people who work in Chicago, Dallas, or Denver, and who want to live on a dock watching the sunrise over still water. Before 2020, that combination was impossible. Jobs required physical presence. The Ozarks were beautiful, but economically disconnected from high-paying employment. Now that constraint has vanished for significant portions of the workforce. People who discovered remote work during the pandemic and who never want to return to offices have options their parents never had. The Ozarks are one of those options. The isolation advantage that protected the Ozarks from outside pressure is fading. High-speed internet expansion reaches communities that were functionally disconnected from the digital economy. The infrastructure that enables remote work, that enables online commerce, that connects Ozark residents to global information, is arriving. Fewer economic barriers separate the Ozarks from everywhere else. The isolation that kept prices low, that kept outside money away, that preserved traditional patterns, is eroding as connectivity improves. That changes everything about what the Ozarks will become. Conservation is becoming political in ways it never was before. As development increases, land use conflicts intensify. Local families clash with outside investors over access and property rights. Traditional patterns of shared use conflict with new owners who prize privacy and exclusivity. Access versus privacy. Tradition versus tourism. The fights are accelerating as more land changes hands, and new owners bring different expectations about what ownership means. There's a cultural identity split emerging that will define the Ozarks for decades. Old Ozarks are generational families, agrarian values, local-first economics, and community structures built over a century. New Ozarks are driven by lifestyle migration, hybrid work arrangements, investment-minded ownership, and connections to places far from the region. The tension isn't explosive yet. People coexist, communities function, and the split doesn't generate daily conflict. But it is visible to anyone paying attention. Two different visions of what the Ozarks are and what they should become are sharing space without sharing assumptions. The Ozarks survive recessions better than boom cities, and that matters increasingly. Because the region never relied on tech bubbles, never depended on financial services dominance, never built economies around hyper-growth speculation, it does not collapse when those things collapse. Slow growth becomes an asset when the economic cycle turns. The stability that seemed like stagnation during boom times looks like wisdom during bust times. The Ozarks influence Missouri more than Kansas City or St. Louis. Politically, the Ozarks shape statewide outcomes through turnout patterns that ripple outward. Culturally, the Ozarks define what Missouri means to Missourians, the values, the identity, the sense of place that distinguishes Missouri from anywhere else. Psychologically, the Ozarks anchor Missouri's self-conception. Missouri's identity radiates outward from here, not inward from the cities. The biggest shift of all, the Ozarks are no longer a secret. For decades, the Ozarks were underestimated, dismissed as backward, ignored by analysts, investors, and anyone who thought importance required density. Now, the Ozarks are being evaluated, studied, invested in, targeted by capital-seeking returns, by migrants seeking affordability, by strategists seeking opportunity. And once a region stops being ignored, it starts changing faster than anyone expects. The Ozarks still look the same from a distance. Trees covering hills, water filling valleys, The visual continuity suggests nothing has changed, but underneath that surface, in ownership patterns, economic structures, demographic flows, and cultural dynamics, transformation is accelerating. Missouri thinks the Ozarks are timeless. They are not. They are evolving faster than the state recognizes. The real question is whether Missouri will shape that evolution intentionally or react to it after the transformation is already complete. Drop your county in the comments. Are you seeing the change where you live? Are outsiders arriving? Are prices rising? Are the patterns shifting? And if you want the next breakdown in this Ozarks series, subscribe to Hard Truth Untold, because this story isn't finished. The transformation is ongoing, and understanding it matters more than most Missourians realize.